Hey guys, welcome to sportsbookreview.com. We are talking Tour de France with Ian O'Sullivan, and I tell you what, this man knows pretty much absolutely everything there is to know about cycling and Tour de France, the largest cycling competition in the cycling calendar. Pretty exciting stuff. Are you all set? How are you feeling headed into the Tour de France?
Just looking forward to it now, Natalie. We've had a pretty interesting last couple of months in cycling with Chris Froome winning the Giro d'Italia, coming back from the dead that race. I think he had traded out to something like 130 on Betfair with only a few days to go. And he rose like the phoenix from the ashes to win his third Grand Tour in a row, and set it up nicely for the Tour. Everyone's looking forward to it up until we had a bit of drama at the weekend, you could say, when the ASO came out and said that they were going to try and stop him from entering the race because they felt that his presence there brought the race into disrepute because of the ongoing salbutamol case that he was involved in.
Yes, we will get to that in 1 second. For our viewers tuning in and don't know Ian O'Sullivan, you can find him at cyclingbetting.co.uk. And all right, Chris Froome, so he is the favourite. And I sort of said, before we started filming it, it's sort of, Nadal on clay court. Chris Froome has won this many a time. And every time we've done these videos, Chris Froome is the favorite. Now, obviously, there is this controversy with the sort of the double the limit dose of salbutamol. How do you feel about that going forward? Should he be competing? Obviously, they dropped the case, didn't they?
Yeah, well, I mean, that's the way some people will look at it. You're going to have both sides on this sort of case. The doubters will just not take this. They're just not going to be very happy with this decision. But then on the other side, people say, well, he's been cleared by the highest authority that there is in cycling, so he's free to ride. It's been a crazy situation because it's rumbled on since for about 6 months, and the market has reflected that uncertainty because he's been all over race on Betfair when it looks like he might not race, and his rivals are being backed because it looked like he might not race. But now the market has settled down. The UCI and WADA, who are the highest authority when it comes to make a decision on this, say that they have the evidence to say that Chris Froome is clear to ride, and they're not going to proceed with the case any further. And so he starts the race, and he starts as the 7-4 favourite, going for what would be a record-equaling 5th Tour de France win, joining the likes of the legends of the sport, Eddie Merckx, Jacques Anquetil, Bernardino, and Miguel Indurain.
Yes. Yeah, that's right. 2.65 Tour de France winner. Richie Porte there, 5.75. And then the odds drop substantially there. Nairo Quintana at 11. Is it between these two cyclists, would you say, that if you're playing the outright market, it's like, oh, and are you playing the outright market? Is there value on either of those two? Or have you got a sort of a more of a dark horse that you're looking at?
Well, as I wrote my preview for SBR, it's actually incredibly wide open this year. I think, in my preview, I've said I think I named 16 guys who could be considered possible winners of this race. And in the many years I've been doing this, and we've been doing this for 3 or 4 years here, it has been only between 1 or 2 riders in the past, between Chris Froome and Nairo Quintana, or Chris Froome, Nairo Quintana, and Richie Porte. But this year, genuinely, even though the odds do start to go up, they don't go up as steeply as they have in the past. You used to have sort of a 6-4, 2-1, maybe a 5-1, and then it was 20-1, 30-1, the rest. This year you've got 9-1s, 10-1s, 12-1s, 14-1s, 16-1s. They're not out. It's a wide open betting heat this year. So the challenge then is trying to find the value and to see whether we can take on the short price favourites.
Yeah, I tell you what, it doesn't matter which sport you're betting on, it's finding that value. Are you waiting until the first couple of stages before you were to make a wager on the outright? Are you hedging your bets? How are you tackling, considering it is, like as you said, like so wide open, there's possibly 16 cyclists that could lift the trophy. How are you tackling the outrights right now, or are you waiting?
Well, a bit of both, actually, because if I could just talk about the route for a minute.
Sure.
It's an incredible route this year. The ASO have come up with a truly sort of bizarre sort of Tour de France this year, you could say, in some senses, and it could be wildly exciting. The race, sorry, opens this year with a sprint stage. The second stage is a sprint stage, and very often the first couple of days of a big Grand Tour like this, there's a lot of nervousness in the bunches. There's high-speed sprints at the end. We could very often see big crashes coming. So some guys might be out of the running, by stage 2, and then they've thrown a team time trial into the race on stage 3. Some teams are absolute experts at this, like Team Sky and BMC. Other teams are not so. And the likes of Dan Martin, Vincenzo Nibali are going to really struggle in the team time trial. They could lose up to a minute on the likes of Chris Froome on only the third stage. Some riders might find themselves almost the GC running by the time they start the fourth stage. Then there's another couple of sprint stages. They go up a really exciting stage for me. I backed the winner on this stage at 33-1. I think it was in 2016. Alexis Villemot got very excited as he burst clear from the pack. But it's a really exciting finish. It's a very steep climb. And then probably one of the key stages of this race is the stage 2 Roubaix. The last Sunday before the first rest day, so it will be Sunday week, when they'll be riding over 21 kilometers of the cobblestones of the legendary Paris-Roubaix race. And some feel that we could have a lot of casualties in this stage. There could be a lot of guys either crash, get injured, or even just lose time because they get separated as the race breaks apart on what should be a fantastically exciting and possibly very significant stage for the overall GC. And that's before we even enter the mountains, which start on the second week. So I think the race is sort of broken up into two parts almost for punters, in that I think a lot of people will be waiting to see how the land lies at the end of the first week, on the first rest day, which will be Monday week, and weigh up to see who has lost time, who's looking strong, how things have shaped up, because it could be an entirely different race in 1 week.
Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of sprinting in the beginning. Is that looking at sort of the green jersey market? Peter Sagan is heavily favoured there at 1.5. Is there any value in that? Is it his to lose?
Well, we thought it was his to lose that last year at 4-7, and I think in my preview I said, barring an accident or an incident, he's going to win it. But sure enough, he had an incident, and on only the fourth stage last year. It was the famous coming together between himself and Mark Cavendish, where Mark Cavendish tried to come up on the barriers on the inside, and Sagan stuck his elbow out and put him in the barriers and brought him down. So the jury disqualified him. So anybody who had steamed in last year at 4-7 got burnt very badly on only the fourth stage. But he is an absolute legend at this. He's going for, I think it's the 5th green jersey. He's probably going to win it. He just racks up points after points after points because he's involved in every kind of finish. He's involved in every kind of stage, bar the extremely high, tough mountain stages. Whereas the sprinters, a lot of them, can't get involved in the sort of lumpier, bumpier stages where Sagan will still be around. But I think it's worth taking him on. Last year I backed Arnaud Demar at something like 16-1, and he actually took over the lead of the green jersey for a while. But then on one stage, he finished over the time limit and was disqualified, much to my annoyance. I think Arnaud Demar could have another chance this year if he can just stay in there over the mountains. I don't think the mountains are as hard as they were last year. And my other option for this would be, just remind me, I'm trying to think who my second choice for this was. Bear with me, sorry. Dylan Groenewegen, how could I forget? He's my pick for the winner of the first stage. How could I forget? He's one of my favorite riders. He won this last stage for us in Paris last year. Little Dutchman. I think he's the fastest sprinter in the world at the moment. He's got a good lead out. He's got a chance, I think, of scoring maybe one or two of the first 3 stages that they sprint. And I think he could take an early lead. And he's, as we saw last year, he can get to Paris, unlike Marcel Kittel and a number of others. So I think Dylan Groenewegen is a pretty good bet at around 7-1, that sort of price.
All right. Now you sort of mentioning sort of the first couple of stages, the sprint stage. Then we head to the mountains, and King of the
Yes.
Mountains seems to. That's what I'm looking at. Seems to have the value and seems to be quite open as well. Certainly, just looking at a lot of the betting markets, it seems to be more open than the previous Tour de France's. King of the Mountains. Who would get your bet there?
The King of the Mountains is one of the hardest markets to bet on. It
know.
really is a nightmare because you've just no idea as to who has set out on the very first stage with on the back of his head, I'm only going to go for the King of the Mountains. Nothing else. I don't care. Sometimes they don't even want to win stages. They just want to get out there and take the points that are in the middle of the stage by cresting the big climbs that come midway through the stage, racking up the points, and then rolling home at their own pace and letting the GC guys fight it out. But Warren Barguil won this competition last year. He was a very stylish winner of it last year. He went out early. He set his stall out early, and I think on something like stage 9 to Foix, he took a load of points, built up a lead, and he was never passed. It's kind of one of those competitions sometimes that if the leader gets a good lead, he goes in break after break after break, and the rest of the peloton sort of leave him take the points sometimes because they sometimes there's no point in some of the other guys fighting for the points over the mid stage climbs, and they know that he's going for the jersey. So it can be worth your while getting out there early, and we hit the mountains straight away on the second week with 3 tough stages in the Alps. One of which is an incredibly bizarre stage. It's only 100 kilometers and up and down all day, and it's going to be a very short, quick stage. But it's not as bizarre as one of the stages that we have in the Pyrenees later, which is just 65 kilometers long. I do more kilometers than that in a Sunday morning spin. These guys will do it in probably just over 2 hours. Excuse me. And it's just an innovation by the organisers this year. They wanted to see if they threw in something very unusual, because not only are they racing over only 65 kilometres, but they're doing a sort of a Formula One style staggered start, in that they're starting the first 10 in the GC first. In behind them, they'll have the next 10 in the GC, and then they're letting them go. And then the next groups, there'll be groups of 20 bunched after that going along the road. So it's going to be a fascinating stage to watch, because you might have some guys will try to wait for their support riders who are further back in the grid, and other guys will want to attack from the gun and go straight away, because it's only 65 kilometers, and it's going to be fascinating to see how this stage will play out, because some of Chris Froome's rivals, if he is looking like he's going to win it, I think will just go for the throat that day and just really try and stretch them out and see what happens. So it's going to be an interesting stint in the Pyrenees, and there are not so many summit finishes in this year's race, only 3 of them. So I think it's going to be somebody from breaks that will take the jersey this year. I think Warren Barguil is a rock solid favourite again this year. He's built his whole season around this. You can get around 3-1 for him. I think he's worth having a bet as a saver, and then maybe nibbling at the likes of Rafael Majka, who's won this jersey twice in the past. I think as well, he looks like he's coming into a lot of form, and he's a decent price around 16, 14-1, that sort of way. And you've got sort of a lot of the GC favourites are pretty short in the betting as well, but I think the points will be spread around quite a bit. So you might find that Froome will win points one day, Porte will win points next day, Quintana will win points next day. So they mightn't actually stretch a lead, whereas someone like Barguil, who will be picking up points, or Majka, who will be picking up points, might just be able to accrue enough to win the competition.
Yeah, it's certainly sort of on paper. 2018 Tour de France sounds sort of more sort of exciting and challenging than the 27 Tour de France. What do you think? How the two compare?
Well, it's last year's race was very good. I mean, it was a very exciting race, and unfortunately, I think from Punter's point of view, who had backed Richie Porte like me last year, a lot of the challenge was taken out of the race when Richie Porte crashed heavily. I think it was on stage 10, and he took Dan Martin as well down the crash with him. Porte crashed out of the race. I mean, I was on him from January, February at 10-1, 9-1. He went off at something like the 13-8 favourite to win the race. And we'll never know whether he would have beaten Chris Froome in the end, but it was very disappointing for somebody who would have been a major challenger to Froome to crash out rather than see him lose it on the road fair and square. So, hopefully this year we'll see the top GC favourites stay upright, stay in the race, battle it out. It is a very interesting looking route. As I said, you've got the cobbles in the first week, you've got the short, punchy stages. And what's very interesting as well is that they have that very many summit finishes, as I said. And I think there are 3 stages which finish at the bottom of quite, nasty climbs with 20 kilometers to go or so on. So what you might actually find is whoever crests the final climb on these stages might not actually be the winner, because they could be caught on the descent down to the finish, and somebody who's a faster descender or a faster sprinter might actually win that. And so there's all sorts of stages in this race this year, and I think it's going to be a really, really good tour to watch.
Yeah, yeah. So we've discussed but the polka dot and the green. Who's winning the yellow jersey?
Wow. Well, it looks like it's Chris Froome's to lose again. He's got a fantastic team with him.
Yeah.
He will put time into all of his rivals in the third stage. Maybe not all of them. I think Richie Porte will probably be very close to BMC. Richie Porte's team will be very close to Team Sky in the team time trial. And it might all come down to what happens on the stage to Roubaix. There's worries that Richie Porte is a bit flaky. He's a bit light. He's a bit, nervous. If he has a bad day that day, he could lose 2, 3, 4 minutes, and it could be all over. Vincenzo Nibali is looking like he's had terrible form all season, but we know that Vincenzo Nibali gets it right when it comes to the Tour de France. He's a former winner of the race, former winner of the Giro d'Italia and the Tour of Spain. When it comes to the big events, Vincenzo Nibali can get it right. And that's why he's only something like 9-1, 10-1 the betting, even though he's done nothing this year. Richie Porte has come here on the back of winning the Tour de Suisse. He looked impressive there. One of his attacks on one of the stages showed that he has got the power and the watts to probably drop Chris Froome on some of these mountains. It's whether he can, keep it going for 3 weeks is what we've got to wait and see. Nairo Quintana, he's a massive price. I think he was maybe 6-4 2 years ago. He was a bigger price last year because he didn't have great form and he had done the Giro d'Italia. So he was tired after the Giro d'Italia, but he still ended up something like 7th overall. But he's 14-1 this year.
Yeah.
And he's a superb rider, and he looked pretty impressive as well in was it the Tour de Suisse he was in? The Tour de Suisse, because the next day after Richie Porte won his stage, Nairo Quintana went on the attack with something like 26 kilometers to go to the finish. And was very, very impressive. And you've got so many other guys as well. You've got Adam Yates, who's riding superbly well, has got a powerful team here with him. And not forgetting the other side of the movie star, tri-star attack, as they're calling it. They've got Nairo Quintana, Mikel Landa, and Alejandro Valverde, they've taken their 3 best riders to the Tour, which is quite unusual. Normally they kind of split them up and put one of them to the Tour of Italy, one of them to the Tour of Spain, and one of them to the Tour de France. They've put all their big guns into this Tour de France, and it could make it very exciting because they're going to be attacking Froome left, right, and centre. And Landa is one of the best climbers in the peloton. Valverde, as we know, just wins race after race after race. At the age of 37 or whatever he is, he just keeps going. He's phenomenal, and so it's going to be fascinating watching that battle between the movie star guys and Team Sky, Richie Porte, and but I kind of like Romain Bardet. I'm coming to finish him here with him. I picked him last year with you guys at 25-1. I liked him last year each way, and he duly landed the each way money for us. Wasn't quite good enough to win the overall because Chris Froome beat him, but he held on the final stage by 1 second. After 3 weeks of racing and something like 3,500 kilometers, he held on by the skin of his very skinny teeth. So we just about scrope in there with the 25-1 last year. He's not quite that price this year. I think he's something like 10 or 12-1. But he's in great form. He's a superb climber. He seems to have improved his time trialing, and I think he'll be top 3 again this year.
All right, let's
with
crunch.
a bit of luck, he might win it.
All right, so let's talk obviously now, before obviously Tour de France starts off, what bets would you advise our viewers to lock in now? We've discussed sort of like some of our favorites and, you know, cyclists that we're looking at. What sort of bets would you take right now? And then are there different sort of stages, like after sort of week one, you know, maybe we can sort of like get back together and sort of then discuss, you know, what we can do moving forward. But what bets
Sure.
would you advise to sort of lock in right now?
Well, I think definitely if you're going to lock in some bets now, it has to be in the green jersey side of things because there'll be a huge amount of points will be awarded towards the green jersey in the first week, and even the first two stages. You got two sprints. If you get somebody like Groenewegen winning the first two stages, he has 100 points straight away, whereas his nearest rival, if his nearest rival finishes second on both stages, will have only 60. So there's, excuse me, I think if you're going to back Groenewegen, do it now. I'm backing him to win the first stage as well. I'm sort of really, pinning my flag to the Dylan Groenewegen mass in this tour. One of the bets I've had as well is I think something like, I forget what the odds it was, but I've had a bet with Bet365 that he will win more than one stage. So he's going to win two stages or more. I think it was 13-8, something like that. But I think he'll definitely win one stage. If he gets to Paris, I can see him winning that stage as well. So I think it's a pretty good bet that he will land two stages in this tour. As for waiting, I think wait for the King of the Mountains. There's no point really in backing the King of the Mountains for the first week because the guy you back might end up breaking his leg on the cobbles of stage 9 or anything can happen in the first week. There's going to be a lot of winds blowing in off the coast of Vendée and off the Atlantic. We could have echelons, crashes, time losses, all craziness in the first week. Wait until the first rest day. Take stock of who's still in the race, where they sit, etc. If somebody like Dan Martin got caught out and has lost 10 minutes, he might decide, you know what, I'm going to go for the King of the Mountains jersey. And that's what happens sometimes. They reevaluate and reassess their objectives and goals for the race and change tact. One of the bets I like for this race as well, I've been kind of doing my homework on number of finishers, and they have Bet365 have gone each of 5 to 6. So it's a coin toss basically on a split, which is over or under 148 and a half finishers.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who the half a finisher is going to be, but we know what it is. It's whether it's going to be 149 or more or 148.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to be under. I think I've been looking at the stats, and I think the average number of finishers going back the last 30 years is about 76% of finishers. And that comes in at about 135 riders. It may not be as little as that this year. One of the things to remember, they've reduced the number of riders in each team this year from 9 to 8. With the reason for that, supposedly to try and reduce the number of accidents, have less riders in the race. And as a result, we might see less crashes and so on this year. There was not very many crashes in the Tour of Italy this year. But I think it's a tough course. I think we could see a lot of guys maybe get injured or drop out on the cobble stage. And seeing as there are 3 very tough mountain stages before the final stage in Paris, you might actually see a lot of the sprinters just pull out before they hit the last mountains. We saw it last year. Marcel Kittel and a number of other guys dropped out. And my bet, one of the bets I'm having before the race starts, is under 148 and a half finishers, 5 to 6.
All right. So focus on the green jersey, the number of finishes being under, and wait for King of the Mountain. Anything else that you want to add before we wrap up this video, Ian?
It's as I said, it's going to be a crazy sort of stage. So I think it's worth keeping an eye on Twitter, keeping an eye on posts from SBR and from myself during the race. We'll check back in as the race goes on and maybe have a look at how things are looking. One other thing actually that I saw today, which kind of caught my interest, was the number of jersey wearers. And I think the line is something like 5.5 different jersey wearers. And I think it sort of evens over. So I can't remember exactly what the odds are, but I think they'll be over the 5.5. I think we could have 3 different jersey wearers in the first 3 stages. We get 2 different sprinters winning the first 2 stages. The bonus times that come with that means we possibly could see 2 different leaders. We're going to get another different leader on the 3rd stage because of the team time trial. And we could see another different leader at the end of the Roubaix stage. So we're up to 4 already, and that's before we hit the mountains. At some point, Chris Froome will take over, hopefully, and it won't be too soon. But we could see that we get a 5th one, maybe in the Alps, and then potentially in the Pyrenees, we might have a sixth rider. That's what I'm kind of thinking. It's one of those wacky bets that are on the outside, the other markets category. But I kind of, it gives us an interest for the duration of the race, and you'll be hopefully cheering every time you see a different guy go up on the podium.
I like it. What were the odds for that one?
I think it's again about 5 to 6, something like that, even. So it's kind of a coin toss, but I think we've got the odds slightly in our favour to go over.
Yeah, fantastic. And to quote one of our viewers here, amazing insight. It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Ian from cyclingbetting.co.uk. It'd be lovely if we can get together after week 1 when we're after stage 10, I think it is, when we get together and discuss the market, and maybe something will be a little bit clearer, and then we can make some more bets moving forward if you're up for it. But a big pleasure as always talking to you, and best of luck with everything. Enjoy Tour de France.
Pleasure as always. Thank you, Natalie.